Hi, I'm Vanessa, and today I'm going to talk about this really awesome, great news that was just released a few days ago by the U.S. Department of Justice. Finally, the U.S. Department of Justice is actually doing something that I want them to do for a change, which is great. It is so hard to get their attention on much of anything, and I'm not going to go into that topic. But the U.S. military spouses, which over 90% of them are women, according to congressional data that was released recently, have forever been dealing with being disenfranchised and marginalized and unemployed and ignored and dealing with hostilities from these occupational licensing. And this is something I've dealt with repeatedly in the past as well, as recently as in the last few years, 2-3 years roughly. And my experiences were profoundly negative, to say the very least. So this really won't affect me at this point because of where I'm at in my own life. However, it will affect so many other military spouses for the better. I saw this on my LinkedIn at Go Vanessa. It was shared by another military spouse. I went ahead and actually went and reviewed every single document pertaining to this. And I shared it on my LinkedIn, which is at Go Vanessa. And I went ahead and put it on my featured on my profile section. So if you're on LinkedIn, check it out. It's right there. You'll be able to find it all there. All right, so Justice Department reinforces federal protections for service members and their spouses in a letter to state officials. This is about occupational licensing, professional licensing boards for military spouses. So basically, the occupational licensing boards, in my experience and research and what I've heard from all these other military spouses, are constantly doing everything they can to put up more barriers and bureaucracy in front of military spouses and really all out-of-state licensees that would like to work in that state, unfortunately. In my opinion, this is about power and control and money. And I'm not the only one who is a professional who has observed this and is of that opinion. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read through this. This is quite a lot. I'm not going to read every single thing. Again, it's on my LinkedIn at Go Vanessa. All of it is. I do want to hit some key highlights, though, and that is that a military spouse about 3 days ago, it appears I found a legal document that was linked to all of this, and it appears that they've taken some type of legal action this military spouse has against a Texas occupational board of some kind, and appears to be represented by a lawyer. And I think this may be the first of its kind. So it's pretty exciting stuff to see. And I think it prompted all of this from the U.S. Department of Justice. So very exciting. And I was really concerned and didn't believe that any of it would be enforced. That has been the case. And even a politician even mentioned that. Didn't know how they're going to enforce it. And it looks like the U.S. Department of Justice has figured this out. And they also provided a link on their website where military spouses can go and eligible people for this law and file a complaint if their rights are being violated. So it's very exciting. I want everyone that's eligible about this to know about this in the military community. And I know as a fact that not all occupational licensing boards seem to have gotten the memo on this. And I'm very curious of how this is going to play out, and I'm wanting to watch it. I will be. I've set up, I'm paying attention, so I will be seeing the news if there is any on this for sure. All right, so the U.S. Justice Department announced that it has issued a letter to all state licensing authorities about new employment-related federal protections for military families. The letter informs state licensing authorities about Congress's recent amendment to the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA, that allows service members and their spouses to use their professional licenses or certificates in new jurisdictions, aka like new states that they move to, if they are relocating because of military orders and meet certain other requirements. So the U.S. Department of Justice also has an informational like brochure handout that they link to as well. I linked to that and featured it on my LinkedIn at Go Vanessa. Service members, this is a quote, service members and their families should not face unnecessary barriers to employment because of the sacrifices they make in service to our country, said Attorney General Merrick B. Garland. The guidance we are issuing today reflects the Justice Department's commitment to honoring our nation's service members and their veterans, not just with words, but also with action. So I firmly believe that this is all happening right now because of the recruiting retention shortage situation. At any time, anyone could have chosen to have done this in the past several decades and generations as credentialing, licenses, certifications have become more and more required and pronounced for various types of employment. However, they chose not to. And I think that the only reason that this is happening right now, this law was passed, the Justice Department's getting involved, is because the recruiting retention issues have become noticeable enough for Congress to now care. All the while, though, for many years, it's been a situation every time, to include right now, they're constantly talking about and debating about, and there's special interest groups and people out there with deep pockets that would like to eliminate all compensation and benefits for the military community, period. And when you treat humans like they're disposable, why would they want to commit their lives to that? So I think that's why we're getting this, is because the recruitment retention issue. Service members, another quote, bear great burdens to protect and advance our democracy, and families of these dedicated military professionals often make sacrifices on our behalf, including frequent moves, very true, childcare challenges, yes, because it's super expensive for everyone in this country, and interruptions or barriers to employment, said Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. The resources that we are making available should empower many service members and military spouses with professional licenses to better navigate the burdens that can result from frequently moving around the country. I think that they're really going to have to come down hard on these occupational licensing boards to get this enforced, though. And I'm just so proud of the military spouse that is pursuing this formally and taking legal action, because that is just so challenging with the American legal system being the way it is. I don't know how she was even able to figure that out. I really don't. In January 2023, Congress added a new provision to the SCRA, which is Service Member Civil Relief Act, a law that provides service members and their families with a wide variety of financial and housing protections to make it easier for service members and military spouses to have their professional licenses recognized when they relocate to another state due to military orders. The new SCRA, Service Member Civil Relief Act, license portability provision provides that service members and military spouses can have their out-of-state licenses recognized as valid in the new state while they are stationed there, as long as they meet certain requirements. And the letter to state licensing authorities explains how the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA's license portability provision, reduces the administrative hurdles that service members and their spouses face when they move across state lines. The documents explain the requirements service members or their spouses must meet to have their license or certificate recognized as valid under this new law. The department is also releasing a fact sheet about the Service Member Civil Relief Act's, SCRA's license portability provision. The Justice Department also filed a statement of interest in Porte versus Morath, a lawsuit filed by a military spouse, that's the one I'm referring to right now, in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Texas. Yay! So excited about this. Alleging the state of Texas denied her request to have her out-of-state school counseling licenses recognized as valid as required underneath the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA's license portability provision. According to the complaint, the military spouse had school counseling licenses issued by Ohio and Missouri and recently moved to Del Rio, Texas, due to her husband's military orders. She alleges that the Texas state licensing authorities told her that the new SCRA, Service Member Civil Relief Act law, would not apply to Texas. And that's a direct quote, would not apply to Texas. The department's statement of interest argues that the requirement that the license have, quote, actively used during the 2 years immediately preceding the relocation, end quote, to the new jurisdiction should be interpreted to require only that the license have been used at some point during the prior 2 years. Now, I also want to mention that right there, that requirement, that 2-year thing, I disagree with it. I think that's arbitrary. I don't think it should be imposed, period. Utah, the last I checked, had a really great law in their books where it was just like true recognition is what it was called, according to the Department of Labor, and you can find this online. It's all public info. They're the only one in the nation I could find with true recognition, and that is if you had, as a military spouse, relocated to Utah due to military service members' orders, then you could just work there and have your credential recognized immediately and not jump through a bunch of extra hoops. It was pretty amazing. And so I think true recognition is what should happen, and not this, oh, you had to have worked at some point in the last 2 years or use the license. Because at the end of the day, I have no doubt in my mind, I am of the opinion that occupational and licensing boards, many of them are going to continue to try to impose barriers and interpret things in a way that is disadvantageous to anyone with an out-of-state license trying to work in their state. And I believe that this is due to, in my humble opinion, due to power, control, and money. That's what I think it's about. So I don't think that this law is as good as it could be, but it's certainly better than nothing. Okay, back to this Department of Justice statement. It also discusses the significant public interest that is served by reducing barriers to licensure and increasing career opportunities for service members and their spouses. And I agree with that, but I also want to say something that blows my mind about this whole out-of-state licensee thing, whether we're talking about the military community or just in general, is that a lot of the occupations that are utilized with these credentials by military spouses and others are in shortage. Like medical professionals, mental health professionals, teachers, so many people, and yet still they'll try to, the occupational licensing board, to keep these people out and unemployed. So it's disadvantageous to the community, which is discussed in these documents. It's disadvantageous to people seeking employment because they're now being marginalized and disenfranchised. I know what that feels like. So it doesn't make sense. And I just, again, think this is about power grab, in my opinion. Okay. Quote, this federal law is in place to help military spouses maintain their careers and financial security while enduring already stressful life changes. Yes, that is right. Another thing I'd like to point out about this is that the constant conflicts that military spouses are going to face more often than not with things like, for example, as simple as just trying to have a career, but there's countless other barriers as well to just life in this lifestyle. It is unhealthy. It is unhealthy. It is toxic. It is dysfunctional. And it really does contribute to, in my opinion, adverse health outcomes for people in this lifestyle to constantly have to be in conflict and have to fight for some basic rights and recognition. And, you know, the way that people are treated in this lifestyle is not favorable. And this stuff is just one more example, and it's long overdue that action's been being taken. Okay, so back at this. So U.S. Attorney Jamie Esparza, okay, I'm probably butchering that, for the Western District of Texas, quote, ultimately, the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA, strengthens America's military families and our overall national security. And that is not something any agency should interfere with. I love that quote. Service members and their spouses who are covered by this new law are likely eligible for military legal assistance and can contact their local legal assistance office for help. Okay, I'm just going to be really honest with you now. My experience with these JAG offices, these military legal offices, have not been positive. Historically, trying to get a hold of them, trying to get a phone call, trying to get basic access has been basically impossible. Impossible. And if you read, historically, I read the regulations about JAG or military attorneys, and it states very clearly when I last read them that they're basically, my words, not theirs, those attorneys are there to basically serve the institution and that base and kind of keep that bureaucracy running. They're not there for the benefit of military community members, military families, military service members' benefits. Okay. So I again think this all has to do with military recruiting and retention and the fact that it's an issue, right? Like, it's obviously a noticeable issue to the powers that be. And now all of a sudden, you know, they want to throw a bone to the military community, which is just long overdue, and more should have and could have been done, but hasn't been up until very little being done right now. But at least it's a start. office locations, and then they give office location for like the Air Force, essentially, legalassistance.law.af.mil. So it looks like that's Air Force. If service members or their spouses are not eligible for military legal assistance services, they may request that the Justice Department review their claim by submitting a complaint through. And then it has a very specific website where you can submit a complaint, which is great. That's great. That's great. So hopefully that will help people in this situation. The Service Member and Veterans Initiative, housed in the Department's Civil Rights Division, works to ensure that the rights of the brave men and women of our nation's armed forces and the veterans who have served in the past are safeguarded from discrimination and unfair treatment. You know what? That's been going on forever. And now again, why are they taking an interest? Why do they care all of a sudden? Military recruitment retention is down. That's why. Since 2011, the department has obtained over $481 million in monetary relief for over 146,000 service members through its enforcement of the Service Member Civil Relief Act. You can learn more about the Service Member and Veterans Initiative at servicemembers.gov. So that was informative. Now I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next piece of information, which is going to be this right here. This is actually the letter that went out to, evidently, it says here, state licensing authorities. State licensing authorities. This is the letter that went out to them. So like, yay! So excited. Alrighty. Office of the Assistant Attorney General, U.S. Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. Yay. Introduction. The Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division is issuing this letter to notify state licensing authorities of a new provision in the Service Members Civil Relief Act, SCRA, about the portability of professional licenses for service members and their spouses. Service members bear great burdens to protect and advance our democracy. Likewise, the families of these dedicated military professionals often make sacrifices on our behalf and face frequent moves, childcare challenges, and interruptions or barriers to employment. All of this is true. Military families most often relocate through a process formerly known as Permanent Change of Station, PCS moves. According to the 2021 Department of Defense survey of active duty spouses, 48% of respondents stated that finding employment was one of the most critical problems they experienced during PCS moves. Military spouses specifically reported difficulty transferring their professional licenses or certificates from one location to another, which often hinders their ability to find jobs in the new locations. The survey also notes that the unemployment rate for military spouses was 21%, and that unemployed spouses actively seeking work spent an average of 19 weeks looking for employment. And so that right there is well over 4 months. 16 weeks would be 4 months roughly. And so that's close to 5 months roughly is what they're saying. And I mean, that's if you're lucky enough where it even works out in your favor, because if you're dealing with these credentialing issues, you're likely not going to be very successful more often than not. I was reading on LinkedIn, someone posting that they're licensed in 3 different states. I don't even know how they pulled that off. I really don't. These states, I was in a state, they wanted you to pay all this money. Like we're talking hundreds, if not thousands of dollars in fees. That's just totally unnecessary. They're intentionally, these occupational and professional licensing boards are intentionally placing barriers in front of these military spouses and any out-of-state licensee, really, most of them, to basically hinder them from getting the occupational credential they need to work. And it's just unfortunate. The Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA, provides service members and their dependents with certain financial and due process protections during military service. And I actually have found that helpful. Many years ago when I was on active duty in the military, I actually utilized that and was made aware of it through word of mouth. And it actually did assist me in something very tangible. So it is definitely helpful. That law and knowledge of the law is helpful, but in then enforcing it can be tricky, which is where we're at right now with this occupational licensing situation. All right, so on January 5th, 2023, the current president signed the Veterans Auto and Education Improvement Act of 2022, HR 7939 into law. This law amends the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA, by adding a new section called, quote, portability of professional licenses of service members and their spouses, end quote. We request that you carefully review the information in this letter and evaluate your practices to ensure compliance with this new federal law. Again, this went out to state licensing authorities regarding professional occupational licensing for military spouses and anyone else that would be eligible in the military community underneath this new law. Overview of the new law on professional license portability. This new Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA provision allows service members and their spouses to use their professional licenses and certificates in certain circumstances when they must relocate due to military orders. For a license to be considered valid in a new location, a service member or their spouse must satisfy the following 5 criteria. Number 1, have moved to a location outside the jurisdiction of the licensing authority that issued the covered license or certificate because of orders for military service. 2, provide a copy of the military orders to the licensing authority in the new jurisdiction. 3, have actively used the license or certificate during the 2 years immediately preceding the move. I disagree with this provision. I don't think it should have made it into the law. It is arbitrary, and they should immediately remove that. But that is currently, unfortunately, the law. 4, remain in good standing with A, the licensing authority that issued the covered license or certificate, and B, every other licensing authority that issued a license or certificate valid for a similar scope of practice and in the discipline applied for in the new jurisdiction. And 5, submit to the authority of the licensing authority in the new jurisdiction for the purpose of standards of practice, discipline, and fulfillment of any continuing education requirements. If these 5 criteria are met, the service member or their spouse's covered license or certificate, quote, shall be considered valid at a similar scope of practice and in the discipline applied for in the new jurisdiction, end quote, for the duration of military orders. The new law's impact on interstate licensure compacts. Some states are members of interstate licensure compacts. So my understanding, last I heard, is that nurses are a part of that. And so good for them. That sounds great. I wish all occupations were so friendly with each other, had such a great collaborative working relationship across state lines. Unfortunately, most do not seem to. Okay, so let's get back to this. So let's see. Where a service member or their spouse is relocating from one state to another state involved in the same interstate licensure compact, the rules of that interstate compact instead of the new Service Member Civil Relief Act SCRA provision applied to the covered license at issue. And I think that they're just trying not to interfere with what's already been set up that actually works for people. Like the nurse thing that I'd heard about is working. Don't take my word for it, but I'd heard very good things about it. If, however, a service member or their spouse has a license or certificate issued by a state involved in an interstate licensure compact, but is relocating to a state not involved in the same interstate compact, the new Service Member Civil Relief Act SCRA provision applies. Additionally, if a service member or their spouse has a license not covered by any interstate licensure compact, the new Service Member Civil Relief Act provision applies. I also want to say, as I'm reading this, I am not a lawyer. I have not been to law school. This is not legal advice. This is not professional advice. If you need a professional, please find one. I am reading off of the U.S. Department of Justice's information that they publicly post on their website. And I've shared this on my LinkedIn at GoVanessa. It's featured right now. So if you go over there right now, it'll be in the featured section of my profile. Effective date of the new law. This new part of the Service Member Civil Relief Act, portability of professional licenses of service members and their spouses, went into effect on January 5th, 2023, when the current president signed the bill into law. Service members and their spouses can now take advantage of this benefit underneath the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA. Enforcement authority for the new law, and this is going to be interesting. Congress has provided the Attorney General with enforcement authority under the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA, which includes this provision regarding the portability of professional licenses and certificates. Specifically, this authority has been delegated to the Civil Rights Division and authorized lawsuits in federal district court against those who engage in 1, a pattern or practice of violations, or 2, violations that raise issues of significant public importance. This is going to be interesting. The Civil Rights Division is proud of its work to enforce the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA, and supports service members and their families. Since 2011, the Justice Department has obtained over $480 million in monetary relief for over 147,000 service members underneath the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA, on issues involving judgments, among others. We appreciate your efforts in ensuring compliance with this new provision of the Service Member Civil Relief Act that is designed to support military families. Yay! Okay, so then as additional resources, it says you can find additional information about the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA, professional licensure and interstate licensure compacts through the following links, and it has several of them: servicemembers.gov, License Finder, Career One Stop, that's Department of Labor website, it looks like, militaryonesource.mil, and then it has that legalassistance.law.af.mil website listed again. It has this civil rights justice link about where complaints can be filed if licensing boards don't want to cooperate, basically. And then conclusion, the Service Member Civil Relief Act, SCRA, provides important legal protections for our military families who do so much for our country. We hope that this new law eases some of the significant burden that constant moves around the country can create. The Justice Department appreciates your assistance in ensuring the rights of our nation's service members and their families are safeguarded. And then it's signed off sincerely, Kristen Clark, Assistant Attorney General, Civil Rights Division, U.S. Department of Justice. Okay, so just want to say real quick, my name is Vanessa. I am author and public speaker. I am a military veteran and spouse and was born into a military family. And I am not a lawyer. I've not been to law school. This is not any kind of legal advice, professional assistance whatsoever. I'm just read off all this information from the U.S. Department of Justice about the Service Member Civil Relief Act, the new provision pertaining to military spouse, occupational professional licensing that also applies to other members of the military community, like service members potentially. And before I wrap up, does anybody have any